Hi, everybody. Welcome to Zeal Zaddy. I am Scott. My pronouns are he, him. And this is Story Talk, where every picture tells a story. Tonight, we're going to be discussing what I think is one of the most fundamental things of all role-playing games. And that is the performative part of it, the performance of the players and the character, the players playing characters. The other part, I think, that is the character-controlled part is the wargaming aspect, which is really the mechanics of the game. We're not going to really be touching on that tonight, but I think that playing a character is the most basic part of role-playing, and most people fall in love with this game for the acting part of it, playing the role. So we're going to do a deep dive into what makes a character, more than just numbers and the name on paper, but what makes a character interesting and exciting to play, but also one you want to play for the long haul, because this is really what we're talking about is campaign characters. One-shot characters are a different thing, or even for a mini campaign, because the effort required that we're going to be talking about in this really doesn't suit one-shots, just because the time involved in doing all this stuff. If you're a rules lawyer, you may not like this episode tonight, because we're not going to be doing rules. We're going to be doing all rule of cool. So follow us everywhere at ZealZaddy. During intermission, I do highlight Kickstarters, crowdfunders, and other kinds of crowdfunding TTRPG related products. So if you have any you want to show next week, or not next week, because the next one is actually in 3 weeks. Because next week's my birthday, I'm taking it off. And the week after that, I'm in a cheer competition with one of my daughters. And then we'll be back March 5th with some amazing guests that, I've been blessed with amazing guests so far. And I wish I could tell you who's coming. I'm so excited about all of them. I'm so excited about tonight. But let's bring everybody on. Let's get you to meet the people that are more important anyway. All right. Hello, everybody. Why don't we have everyone go around and say who they are? I think some of you are known to the people in chat. I know there's one or two people in chat who know at least one of you. So why don't we start with you, Shannon?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Shannon. I am from Paradise Productions. My pronouns are she, her. I'm sroby25 on all socials. I am the community manager for Paradise as well as a cast member. And you can find us on Paradise Pro on Twitter and Paradise Prod everywhere else, because that was taken on Twitter. It's fine.
Yes.
It's fine. I cosplay. I voice act. My newest level is Mama. My little boy's going to be 4 months old on Wednesday already. Oh my God. I just can't believe it. So I am also a performer. I love to perform. I am formerly known as Scarlet, the brooding redheaded rogue from Campaign 1 of Advantage in Paradise. My Campaign 2 character debuts tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. on our Twitch channel. I'm going to try not to give away too many spoilers, but I'm pretty excited for my new gal. It's gonna be great. We have some other programming on the channel as well. We've got Relaxing in Paradise with our DM Sean, and he does mini painting, cartography, video games, really chill stream. And that's usually on Wednesday nights. And then on Sundays, we have the Sean and Shannon Power Hour, which is a recap of the previous week's stream. So that's gonna come back probably next week. And we're going to just chat about what happened in the previous week. So it's a great way to catch up, and we bully each other and pick on each other. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun.
Totally
with
true.
the Power Hour. Yeah. And we've got more streams run by other GMs and new voices coming in the future. So come join us in Paradise.
All right. Wonderful. Cattis.
Yeah, my name is Katarina. Hello. Queen Cattis on most social media. So I'm a role player mostly. I mean, I have a day job and stuff like that. I'm trained in acting, but to be honest, role playing is like 90% of my personality. It's why I got into acting, and acting informs the way I role play, and that's what I talk about on social media and on my podcast. I try to do it about like what role playing has done for me and what I think is great about role playing, and I try to gear it how it's helped my personal development, and also encourage character-driven role play because I really burn for that. I really love that when I'm in a group that all click emotionally with each other in role play. Real magic happens. Like it's just indescribable, and I feel like the best way for me to achieve that is to bring in what I've learned from acting, and instead of thinking of it as performing, we are performing, but think of it as living. Try to convince yourself that you are the character, and that's what I try to bring to the table, and that's what I talk about on my podcast most of the time, and probably will nag your ears off about that here. Sorry.
I think your mic.
Oh no, I still can't hear
Yeah.
you. Like
Oh.
I saw your
I think
screen
I had
light
to-
up, but
You're right.
There it is. There it
Yes,
is.
sorry, Ari. My dog started barking, and I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta quiet my mic."
I saw that happen too. And the dog I'm taking care of is like right over here. And that, anyway, it happened on stream last night. Anyway, hi, I'm Ari Ventures. You can find me performing here in Seattle, Washington on the Unexpected Productions stage in real life. You can also find me at Trooper SJP's channel performing in live roleplay. Our season 2 will premiere at the end of March, and I'm really looking forward to bringing Tarika back. There are other places you can find me that I'm blanking on right now. Oh, online. Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
There you go. Hi.
I think I put in chat my mindful adventure shows some of your real life exploits of nature, which I think is very cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Including a very poor set of choices in the Canadian Midwest Canada Canadian prairies is the word I was looking for, where gas was significantly further away than I thought it was. Look, guys, just fill up your tank when it gets to half if you're going through the Canadian prairies. That's all I have to say. Like,
Right.
just learn from my mistake and read about my mistake if you want to on mymindfuladventure.com. Thank you.
All right. So everybody, if you're in chat, you want to ask a question, I'm going to ask you to please type question in like all caps so that it's very easy for me to spot. I don't have an admin helping out with this kind of stuff tonight, so it's my eyes kind of tracking what's going on. So while we're waiting for some questions to roll in, I'm going to start with questions because I don't like wasting time and not getting to the meat of or the crux of the matter, which is great performances. So I have a nice list of questions. I doubt I'm going to get to all of them tonight, but I'm going to get to some of them. So I'm going to start with an easy one. What has been your favorite scene? Not character, scene that you've performed. And I mean, everybody has a
this is
scene
so
that
hard.
they're like, oh my God, I was killing it that night. Does anybody have a favorite scene they want to mention?
I have so many.
There are many. So you
I
can
can think of the
pick
most
one.
recent one. Like,
go for it.
my most recent favorite,
Okay.
which was Tarika's absolute meltdown the other night. Like, I have played this very buttoned up character like for the entirety of the season, and we've seen sort of the cracks in the armor happening, and getting to finally just like have them completely lose it and explore what that means for this character who was raised in nobility and has rejected it. And that was just so much fun, particularly because both the GM and all of my players like kept putting logs on that fire. Like it was just like that beautiful moment of like total meltdown and utter support in sustaining that meltdown that I just wholeheartedly appreciated.
Meltdowns are fun.
Oh
They're
my
very
God,
fun
yes.
to role play. So much fun. Oh my God, I have so many with Scarlett. I played her for 3 years,
Yeah.
and she's just like she's just a part of my heart, and she always will be. I think the one I'm gonna go with is the one where she finds out that her long lost twin brother.
Yeah. I knew you were gonna go there.
I did. They're all gonna be like all the ones that came to my mind had to do with him. Her long lost twin brother that she was searching for couldn't find him. She'd been searching for 10 years, and she got captured by this psychopath, and he was taunting her and saying all these things that had to do with her life, and it turns out that was her brother. And when I found out, so I found out as a person before Scarlett did, so I had to be like, what the fuck, I had to just temper that down, so that was great. Yeah. But then when Scarlett found out in character, that was one of my favorite scenes, and because I got to be like, no, you're all lying to me, that's not him. The other players had to tell me that's not, and so I was just like that. And that was also the first time that I cried on stream, and it was just I just felt all of her emotions in the moment, and it was really cool. And so yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with, and there's many more, but yeah, that was awesome.
Those were both beautiful scenes, and I've seen both of them, which I'm really happy to have had the opportunity to do.
There are so many great scenes, but the one that really has to win, I'm going to have to try to tell it quickly because it's a long story otherwise. But it's the character I've mentioned of Alfhild. It's a character I was assigned because I was filling in. Someone dropped out, and I took over a character for a campaign, and I had to make her my own. But I also had to make sure that the other players would recognize me as that character. And I think it turned out well. And this is a low fantasy setting. I'm a 13-year-old shepherdess, and I'm half fae. Now, in this world, if you're half fae, you're an abomination in the eyes of the church. And you don't find out that you're half fae until puberty, because that's when you develop animal features. And what happened before I took this character is she had just discovered this, and she's hiding it from her friends. And it's very similar to my situation at the time. I am transgender, and at the time I hadn't come out yet, but I had just started my transitioning in secret. So her place in life, hiding who she truly was from her friends, was exactly my situation, except I didn't know these people. But when we started playing, we all meshed, and we were instantly best friends because our characters were, and we all did this emotional work and worked out so beautifully. And in that first session, one of the party rolls a fumble, and the game master made that mean that she trips and pulls off my kerchief, which shows them my ears, basically forcing my character to come out. And I just burst out in tears spontaneously, and they all did, and we had a wonderful coming out scene. Everyone wasn't there at the time. There was one player who was missing, and I met her the first time the following session, and we had a second coming out scene when the other two characters were goading me into coming out to her as well. And I did, and it was another beautiful scene. First time I met her, and I cried all over her, seriously, ugly crying. And it was so beautiful, and that really, really got to me. First time I met them, and they were instantly best friends forever. And I came out to them in character, and I just couldn't believe it because the character was in the same stage as I was, but she was handed to me. I didn't create her. And there's a lot more to the story, but we'll get to that if we get to that. But that was my favorite scene, and I later came out to all of them. And name Alfhild, the character I was assigned, I actually did a legal name change to make that my second name because of that.
I think that is the definition of serendipity. To have the moment that clearly mirrors your exact life experience in a way that flows into your gameplay, that's amazing.
And that was just the tip of the iceberg, if you know the story.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to talk a little bit more about character creation, not just like performance. So one of the questions that I've been wondering is, as like, I know what I do when I prepare to play a character. So what is your pool of influences or references when you're preparing a new role? Is it history, books, pop culture, other characters you really like, real life? Like if you were visiting Appalachia and you came across some mountain village, would you pull bits of those, the people you met in real life or the environment into a character you're playing if you're going to be playing something like, that fits? So where does your well of inspiration come from?
I like to start with music. I love to listen to like video game scores and film scores, and I find that when I'm listening to the music, like I start daydreaming, or I start thinking up scenes in my head and characters and how they might be behaving in a scene that had this particular song as the background music, and from there, then that starts the character playlist. I have playlists for all of my characters, and it's
Cool.
it's a lot of fun to like listen to, like hear a song and be like, oh my god, this reminds me of so and so, and I immediately will add it to my character playlist. I also, pop culture is big influence for me. The Netflix show Arcane was a really big right
Oh my
was a
god.
really big inspiration for some of Scarlett's stuff, especially with her brother later in the season of Advantage Paradise Campaign 1. And they're just like the emotion that was there, the story beats that were there. I must have watched Arcane through like 6 times. It was just awesome. But yeah, a lot of pop culture stuff as well. Some books that I've read. I love fantasy novels. So yeah, that's where I usually start my character creation process, is getting inspiration from this well. That's a great way to describe it, by the way. Your well of things. And then you just keep adding until it overflows and characters here.
Yep. It's the birth of the character when the water flows out of the well.
Overflows. Yep, exactly.
All right. Either of them.
I like to go into the trivial and the mundane. That's where I like to start. I want to know about the world, what the world looks like, what the culture looks like, what the time is, and what the time period is like. And if there's if the material doesn't tell me exactly, I'll try to find some real world equivalent and just check it out, because I want to know what day-to-day life is. How do I keep myself warm in winter? Is it hard? Is it easy? And I just want to know, what do I do every day? What are my struggles? And then I daydream. Like you said, I love daydream. Daydream the life of the character. And when I have the world around me and it feels like it's real, I start putting other characters in, and I want to know what I feel about them and how they feel about me and how would I like them to feel about me, and populate the world around me, because then I feel like I'm really there. And hopefully, if the other players agree with me on this, some of them will be in there with me. I like to have intertwined backstories. And then once I'm there, I can feel the world around me. Then the daydreaming does itself. I can just imagine, okay, what's behind that building? And it just fills in for me. So once I have my surroundings clear, I just daydream the whole world around me.
So it's just a flow of imagination that turns itself into a character sheet and a character in your mind.
Pretty much. But
Nice.
a very important ingredient is start with the mundane, because that grounds me. That makes me feel like I'm there.
I mean, that does put pressure on your GM, though, because they have to be explaining to you quite a bit about the world around you, too. So, I mean, there has to be a fair amount of give and take on what you're going to get,
Yes, it's just like with acting. Like you take what you can from the director or the GM, but they're not going to give you everything. Whatever they can't give you, you fill in, and you can check with them. Is it okay if I do this? And then you collaborate. Because I can't ask them to write an entire world for me, but I do need an entire world, and what they don't give me, I'll construct.
Nice. Ari, where's your well?
It really depends on the game. So when I've done games that are based in like a historical context, I pull a lot from the reality of what that history was. So I did a show called Night Witches that was based in World War II, and it was like the Russian fleet of women fighter pilots. And so I did a lot of study in terms of what the history was around that time and how to sort of like what would a character look like in that space. But more recently, like in instances where it's not based on history and the world is based more in a theme like a space western or Victorian era or something like that, then my construction really focuses on the sort of like personality traits of the character, because so much gets built throughout the sessions that if I know where like how they handle things generally, then I can build out the rest of their backstory because I can fill in the pieces of why they might handle something like that. But if I know like, oh, okay, they have a short temper, but they're very quick to protect people. So maybe this is just a character that's like a very just they jump very quickly into things, and I'll just sort of let that build itself out, depending also on what the party needs. So if we have a lot of characters with short tempers, then I might be like, oh, maybe I want to play like a little bit more of a mature character that's going to be the voice of reason, that's going to say maybe we don't kick down the door this time, maybe we just knock on it first and like try and say hello to people. So I would say like it really depends where I start, but the biggest pieces I'm answering for myself are, what is the personality of this character, so that I know how to react when the unexpected happens.
Which always happens.
Always happens. It's the best part. Bring the chaos.
We got our first question from chat, and I think it's interesting that this question came from a DM because it is the mirror image of what a DM does. So Odo Sean asks, how do you like to prep for potentially heavy or emotional sessions, and what does recovering from that look like? And I think it's interesting because DMs are always, how do you prepare to create an emotional session? Or something is going to be causing, they're creating the causative effect. They're putting the environment around what you're going to do. So why don't we have Shannon answer this one last, since it's her DM. So one of the other two.
Yeah. All right, I can go. Well, I always like heavy emotional scenes is what I live for. So I always prepare for heavy emotional scenes. I make sure there are things my character cares deeply about, and a lot is at stake when it comes to these things. And most GMs will pick up on those and use them as weapons against me, which is just a GM thing to do. And I don't hold back. It's like I realize sometimes I have to warn GMs that I don't hold emotions back, because sometimes people can't really control someone uncontrollably weeping. But that's how I prepare for having emotional scenes. I basically just make sure I care deeply about things, and those things are clear in the world. And how do I recover from them? I don't want to recover from them. I love them. I'm not kidding.
You embrace the trauma.
I have cried for hours after a session, throughout the night. And if it starts to fade, I'll relive the scene in my head again, just so I can start it up again, because I love it. I love all emotions that come from role playing. I revel in it, and I think because I do, it makes it easier for me to have emotional reactions in future games, and also pick up the next session. I can play it as the hurt is still fresh because I've rehearsed it in my head.
All right, nice, Ari.
Apologies for the distraction over here. The dog is needing some attention. So after this, I think I'm gonna go take care of her real fast. But
Okay.
So I don't always know that an emotional scene is coming up. So it's hard for me in terms of like preparing beyond. There's a couple of tools that I've really appreciated, which is the lines and the veils, and knowing what my other players' lines and veils are. And if you're not familiar with that, a veil is a scene that you can have, but you're going to draw a veil across it before we see the whole thing that happens, right? Um,
Yeah.
Usually I see that with like a sex scene. No one wants to RP a sex scene, but you might have characters that would make sense for them, right? So then you would just sort of see the veil fall across before we go anywhere. Whereas a line is like a hard, that scene cannot happen with this other player. So when I'm preparing in general for sort of like things that might be challenging, whether or not I know that will happen in this session or not, it's important to me to know what my other players' lines and veils are. And then afterwards, a lot of my self-care is like if I have a scene that is really emotionally hard, or because sometimes a scene that's emotionally hard wasn't necessarily as hard for the character as it was for me, right?
Yeah.
And so when I run into instances like that, then I rely on a lot of my self-care tools, which is I journal, I meditate, I take a hot bubble bath, right? Like I take time for myself. I'll take a walk, whatever it is that I need to help myself release that energy or that emotion or that feeling. Because the reality is like, this is fun and it's make believe, right?
Yeah.
And while I have learned a lot from role playing in terms of when hard things come up, yeah, my character reacts this way, but then Ari is like in the back of their mind going, oh, hey, in real life, maybe I could do something like this that would be smarter in that sort of situation. Like, so yeah, I would say in preparation for difficult scenes, since I don't always know when they happen, lines and veils for my other players and
Yeah.
my GM.
Yeah. Safety
And
tools.
then afterwards, just like self-care tools.
Yeah. Safety tools are important. That's what session 0 is all about, getting them prepped, let everybody know where the lines and veils are. It's also a good idea from a DM's perspective to maybe mid-season, or if you have a longer season, to have a session 0-2 midway through to just kind of remind people where you're at, where you're going, and make sure that from the DM's perspective, I like to know, like I use Monty Cook's safety tools before any game. I like to kind of have a comfort zone with people, and DMs are there to create challenges, but I want to create challenges that are not going to make somebody hate the game, hate role playing, leave the game, or anything like that. So, I want the challenges to be ones that are within their comfort zone. Even if it pushes a little bit on the edge of the comfort zone, you just don't cross. That's what the veils are for. You can go hang out with your dog for a minute, take care of your dog. I know that's what you want to do.
Oh yeah. Also, but well, I also had another idea.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I realized
Okay.
there's one other thing that I do. Sorry.
Nice.
And that is I check in with my other players after a difficult scene or a scene where I think might have been difficult. And I'll just say like, hey, like recently in Pirates of Trinax, my character has been a real asshole to another character, and I have done a lot of checking in of like, hey, so Tarika really just went off on Severance, like in a bad way, and I want you to know that I think you're very cool, and I'm so sorry, and I want to make sure we're okay, like, because character bleed is a real thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like with therapists. I think of this a lot as therapy for people. All right. Shannon.
Sean knows my answer to this question already.
Let Sean know how things roll.
Oh, he knows the answer already. But definitely checking in with other players, because Scarlett was a real asshole to some of the characters last session. So I was periodically would check in with the other players and be like, "Hey, like, are you okay? Was that too much?" Like, and so communication, number one, biggest tool for me in recovering from heavy RP scenes. What I like to do to prepare, going back to music, I actually listen to, I have a whole playlist called Cry on Cue, but there's one song in
I would
particular.
love to know what's on that list.
Oh yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll definitely send it to you. But there's one song in particular that Sean played in our home game, and it just struck all the teary, sad chords for me. And it's Streets of Whiterun from Skyrim. I don't video game, so I think it's Skyrim. And I just put that on repeat. And so when I knew Scarlett was going to find out about her brother, I put that on repeat in the background and just listened to it and just was trying to be really mindful of it. And the waterworks came right away. So that's what I put that on whenever I know I'm going to need to be emotional. And it's just, it's so beautiful. I love it. But then to recover, I've had many a late night conversation with Sean, just like, especially about Scarlett, just being like, she's dead and I don't know what to do about it. And just, we've known each other since high school. So we go way back, and we just talk through it. And that's the biggest thing, is just talking through it. And even if it wasn't like a character death thing, it's just like, Scarlett went through a particularly bad like panic attack or something like that, and doing a lot of the self-care that Ari was talking about afterwards, or even role-playing some self-care. Scarlett liked to take bubble baths, and so if she had a heavy scene the session before, the next session she might take a nice hot bubble bath.
Nice. That's cool. And it's funny because people do talk a lot about safety tools, which are preventative, but there's almost no talk about recovery tools. And I think it's, it probably should be talked about more. Like, how do you handle the emotions that have built up from, actors, they live for and in powerful emotion. And if they're not doing that, they're probably not, I don't want to say that. They may be a young actor or someone new to it and has not had the opportunity to experience a really deep scene yet. But when you do, it's potent. It's
all over. As soon as you do, it's all over.
It can be cathartic. For some people, it can even be life-changing. So, you have to treat all of that with care. All right. Speaking of that, we got another question from Scosi. What types of scenes do you find most challenging? Which seems to fit pretty well this. So, who wants to tackle that first?
I'll go.
Okay.
Scenes where I have to take the lead and ask NPC's questions. Like, if I have to be like the face of the party, or if I have to take the lead in an interrogation, like, that's really hard for me because I'm more of a reactive player as opposed to a proactive player, because I like to read the scene and find out where I fit into it and react to the situation, other people's emotions or words or actions. That's something that I'm actually going to try and work on in our new campaign that we're starting tomorrow, is try and take more of a lead in those and work on the improv of that, because I get so flustered and tongue-tied, and what do I say? I don't know what to say, because it's performing and I want to make it entertaining, and I put way too much pressure on myself to to ask a funny question or ask something or say something that'll make people go, ooh, like that's what I'm constantly aiming for. But then I get all up in my head about it. So that's a challenge for me. And if anybody has tips, I'll take them.
Oh God, I can't think of any tips for that. I think because I definitely have some moments where like it's clear that my character needs to take the lead, and I'm like, I'm sorry, there's nothing in the tank. Like there's no brain space up here that can do that right now, and I just try and like let that be a piece of the character when I do, when I find myself in that position, and then justify it later of like, oh well, obviously they'd be like that. They'd been drinking earlier that day because they were so upset or something. I don't know. But I think the hardest for me are actually romance scenes because and it's specifically in the TTRPG space, and because like when I'm on stage or I can like see when I'm in the same room with the other person, it's significantly easier for me to play romance. I think because that energy builds in a different way.
Yeah.
Whereas in the RPG space, I'm trying to look at the camera, I'm trying to have that moment, and I can see that like their image is down here in the bottom right, and I'm just hoping that we're on the same romantic wavelength. And that's really hard for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any ideas on that, like.
I think I have an idea for Shannon. If you want to practice taking charge.
Yes, please.
Try to get someone to GM a one-shot or a shorter campaign where you and the other players are siblings and you're young and you are the older sibling and responsible for everyone.
I am the oldest sibling, so that would be I like it. Sean, let's write it down.
Yeah. All right. So what I find most challenging is because everything comes from emotions when I play. I try to forget that I'm playing as much as I can and try to become the character as much as I can and be as little aware of the real world as possible. Sometimes you need some player knowledge when you play. Those I find difficult because I've made an effort to train that away. Like sometimes I paint myself into a corner. I made one character. I love the character, but she's so difficult to play because I rolled the stats, all random, and I rolled all once on intelligence. Picked human is D&D, so that means I got 4 intelligence. The GM said, all right, you get to reroll. That's animal level. And I thought, oh, animal level. All right, how about this? A wizard accidentally turned his cat into a human. And I thought that was a hilarious idea. And I went with that, and it's so much fun. But playing someone that knows that little, I always have to analyze, all right, how much of the things going on right now do I understand? There was never a moment I could stop analyzing that. That was very difficult for me. Even though I loved the character and I had so much fun, it was the most challenging character I've ever played.
Yeah, I have an episode later in the year that's all about playing challenging characters. Dimwits, evil characters. Like there's a lot of characters I find a lot of myself and a lot of other players really have difficult making feel like they're real within the world they're in. Probably because they're hard to do in any context. So I think it's interesting because there's going to be an opportunity for challenging that a little bit. Okay, so I have another question. I've heard some actors dislike certain characters and love others while they're immersing themselves in them. Do you have an emotional reaction to your characters during their creation? Not while playing, but while creating.
Not really. It feels, I mean, I suppose if I was to say that there was any emotional reaction, it would be curiosity, because it's this level of like exploring to understand what it is that I am building. Um, but I don't usually, if I grow to hate a character, I'm trying to think if I've ever done that. I've hated other characters, but I don't think I've hated a character that I'm playing.
I dive headfirst into my characters, and I love all of my girls so very deeply. And I don't think I've ever hated a character either. I might hate something that they've done, but they are all a piece of my heart, and I love them so much. And I get like during the character creation process, like I'll have an idea, and then I'll work with Sean and work with other people to really develop her, and then when she comes full circle, then it's just like, oh my god, this is incredible, and just have this feeling of like excitement and gratitude and like let's do this, and a determination to play the character like to their fullest potential.
Nice. I've never made a character that I didn't like. But there are things that, like you said, there were things that they did in their past. It's like, it's a little disturbing to play that character, to play that, knowing that is in their past. But
I think this is a really good question to explore, because I think it speaks to one of the great things about role-playing, because I've played some terrible characters that have done some horrible things and said some horrible things. But no, I don't hate any of the characters I've created, even the really nasty ones, because when I'm creating them, I can't play them if I don't understand them and I don't feel them. And that means I have to have empathy with them, otherwise I can't play them. And when I have empathy, that means I get them. It's unfortunate that they took this road and this is where they ended up, but I feel them, and so I can't hate them. But I think that's a great way to practice your empathy, because I'd like people to think this way about the people around them. We're all the way we are because of what's happened to us. And so if someone's really nasty, well, there's probably a reason for that. And maybe we can just try and lead by a good example or something.
Yeah.
Man, like, I love describing it as empathy for the character, and it made me think, like, I think I have more empathy for my character's mistakes than my own. Like,
150%. Yes. Yes.
And I'm like, oh, you poor baby, it was such a rough time. Like, I'm so sorry you experienced that. Whereas I like drop the coffee mug and I'm like, oh my God, Ari. And I'm like, just okay, let's have some compassion. Let's just, spread that around. That's a good point.
Maybe all these characters are the parts of yourself you love the most, so you're putting them out. So you treat them with better care than you treat yourself every day. Who knows?
I must love chaos. That must be it.
Definitely you do. All right. So this is a question I think Sean. I think Sean might find this one interesting. And also, Trooper, your DM, Trooper SJP. So how much does the DM affect your character development? And I don't mean how much input do they have. How much effect does the specific DM you're going to be working with affect how you build your character?
Oh, 100%. Not in the sense
and how?
of...
Not just and how does it affect it?
I don't have to go first. I just got
You
excited.
can go first. Go first.
Go first.
I do think that the GM has a huge impact for a couple of reasons. And I would say not just in the creation, but also in how much I reveal versus how much I put the idea out there that it might exist so that the GM can play with it.
GMs love that.
Oh, I really like it when a GM picks up a little present I left.
We think of them all as tasty
It
morsels.
just makes me so happy. I think like because if I have a very cerebral GM, then I'm going to give them like more specifics in terms of the background of the character as I've developed them and created them. And when I say the background of the character, I also mean like the psychology of where they're at right now, whatever that may be, as well as their, history and that sort of thing. If I'm playing with a GM who likes to experience the play, like build at the same time as we're going through the story, then the character that I outline is probably just going to be like the personality and a little bit of the background. And then it will literally be the GM and I and the other players like fleshing out who this person is and how they move through the world. So I would say probably not just the GM, but also like the players I'm with. Like that has a huge influence on how I build the character.
Nice. I agree with all of that. With how when I go into a playing, which as a forever GM, I rarely play, but man, I love playing.
So much fun. It's so much fun.
It is.
DM doesn't affect the way I initially build my character a lot, at least not directly, unless they say they specifically want a support class or something. I'll try to accommodate. But I try to always have a lot of things to care about, which either becomes hooks that the game master can use to get me where they want to get me, or if it's a DM that doesn't use hooks, I still have those things for my own development. So directly, they don't affect how I build a character, but indirectly, they have a great effect because the hooks they choose to use are the ones that will pull my development.
Do you know which?
So indirectly, a lot of effect. Yeah.
Do you know what hooks you think that the GM or DM that you're working with? Do you know which ones in your head you think they're gonna pull on?
I try not to. Okay. I want to be surprised by that, and that's not hard because I usually create like a gazillion hooks.
Yeah.
So I can't really know.
This whole stream is basically hook makers. All three of you. I can see in your play all the time, hooks are dropped all over the place. And I can see your DMs, they take advantage of that. I don't want to, that sounds bad. They love exploring that because it's not taking advantage of it. You put it out there for that. And
they seize the opportunity.
Yes, exactly. A good DM seizes the opportunity when it's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, and like Ari said as well, like sometimes other characters can also pull your development.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of life in the relationship between two people and more people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Sean has nothing to do with my character creation. No, not true at all. That is absolutely not true. My characters wouldn't be half as developed as if they were if I didn't collaborate with him. I remember when we were working on my first ever character for my home campaign, I had written, well, actually, no. Together, we had written 26 pages of backstory. And it's like only a fraction of what it was. We both love to write. He was a creative writing major in college, and I, just love writing fantasy and getting my ideas out on paper. So we just had a blast with that. We did a lot of the same thing for Scarlett with that. And so Scarlett came to the table with a pretty established backstory. And there was a lot of things that Sean pulled from her backstory into the campaign, which was great. But for my new character that starts tomorrow, we tried a new process. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I do not have what I will say is that I did not do quite as much backstory prep as I usually do. And it's been a really interesting challenge, and I'm very excited to see where it goes and what we do with this new story. Because I'm the type of person that really needs to feel like my character's well established and grounded, so that I feel prepared as a performer. But this new thing we're doing tomorrow is going to be a really cool challenge, and the story is going to really drive a lot of who she is. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, I have a question I'm saving for the second half that's all about process. That's a dive into process. It'll be interesting which process you choose to expose tonight. All right. So let's see. I have so many questions. I have to go through them real quickly and figure out which one I want next. All right. Have you had GMs who didn't want all this effort? All the effort you put into creating a deep character? And how did you handle that if that happened? And I don't mean like, I've seen and heard there's a lot of DMs that don't want a lot of backstory. They don't want all the what's the right word? It's not frills. All the depth that you start with, because they want to have and want you to have more spontaneous growth, I guess. I'm not that kind of DM or GM, so I don't really know, but I've heard people talk about it. I think a lot of that comes from old school players, like old school revival kind of GMs who want it to be more mechanical. But some of the ones that have said it that I've heard, they didn't run strictly mechanical games. And I thought that was interesting too. I mean, maybe it's just they want improv. Have you had GMs that didn't want a lot of backstory, didn't want a lot of character development in advance?
I skipped out on groups after session zeros when it turns out they didn't want depth. Just like, I mean, great, you want to play that way, but it's not really for me, so that's fine. Yeah. But the thing you said about wanting spontaneous growth instead of a growth from the foundation, I understand that desire, but I think there's a misnomer there. Some people think when you have a detailed backstory, it hinders you from changing, and it doesn't. You can keep growing after you create a detailed character. You can even go back and keep developing your backstory. I do that all the time. I built a lot of memories to all of my characters, but I don't stop building memories. Like, I can go back and expand a memory and remember more things about that later. So I understand wanting the spontaneity, but I don't think that a deep backstory hinders that. These are not mutually exclusive to me.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I agree that they aren't mutually exclusive. I also have not had any games where they've been like, don't tell me your backstory. And I've been like, all of my GMs are like, so I at least need a couple of lines. And I'm like, don't worry.
Yeah, that's probably why you're all such good players. You haven't had those GMs.
Yeah, I've also never had a GM that said no backstory. I've had a lot of GMs that'll be like, if you have stuff for a backstory, like send it my way so we can see what we can do to incorporate it into the game.
No limits. Like, I've heard 3-page limits, things like that. Have you ever had anybody limited? Like, I haven't, and I would never do that. I love backstory. I mean, like, for
one-shots, it's been like a couple of lines because it's a one-shot.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like, other than that, no, it's been pretty much whatever your process is. Because I know some people really like to write backstories, and other players don't. They like to only have like just like a couple sentences, and that's enough for them. So it's been, incorporating all those kinds of styles.
And I'm in a couple of games right now where the game master really managed to accommodate both types of players. If one player wants a 10-page backstory and someone else just wants to start with one phrase and build from that, both work together. It doesn't, they don't have to ruin each other. They can actually complement each other.
Yeah, it's true. It can be challenging for the DM to handle that, but a good DM knows how to handle that. Do you have a favorite performer outside of Critical Role that you've seen on streams? And I'll add a caveat. Since it's very likely you're going to call out another player you play with, I'll say you probably don't want to call a specific player, but I'm pretty sure you love the cast you work with. So maybe stay away from your own casts. It's too easy.
There.
Oh, Critical Role. Oh God, I would play with all of them.
Yeah.
I gotta think.
I don't watch that many role play streams because when I do, I just feel like, why am I watching and not playing? I want to play. I like. Well, he's not in the core group, but I like Brennan.
That was mine.
Because he's
Love
very
Brennan.
versatile.
Yes.
And yeah.
I also don't watch a lot of role play, but I'm just usually, it's gonna sound so arrogant. I've got so many things going on in my life. I'm usually doing so many different things that I don't have a lot of spare time for watching things. If I've got spare time, I'm using it to do character creation, or I'm using it to source a costume or something like that. So I don't really have a good answer for that question.
I was gonna say Brennan, but now I'm not going to because
Do it.
no, it's got taken. No, I really like the McElroy brothers too. Listening to Adventure Zone, I really like them too. They're just fun and they've got a really good balance of comedy, but then also like the serious moments and really story driving moments that are really interesting to listen to. And there's so many people in the TTRPG community too that I've had the pleasure of playing with that just I just can't pick one. I could list them off and it would take the rest of the stream. Like I've played with so many wonderful people, and it's just the amount of talent that is in this community is absolutely incredible. And I know I wouldn't be the role player that I am today if it hadn't been for them. So shout out to everybody I've played with. You guys are wonderful.
Well, let's take a 10-minute break. Give everyone a chance to self-care. And if you're in chat, I do run a little video slideshow of Kickstarters are coming up. I'll drop links in if you find any interesting. Support your small creators out there. They're really important.